I'd like to introduce Professor Anna Peeters, who has kindly offered us a video as well. Just press play.
Thanks very much for this invitation to speak at the World Obesity Day discussion on a topic that I'm very passionate about. Really look forward to spending a few minutes talking about how to improve equity in obesity. As many of you will be aware, a number of Australians live with much higher rates of overweight and obesity in a way that's associated with their socio-cultural or socio-demographic background. These might be characteristics such as where people live. So we know that people living in remote areas of Australia have much higher rates of overweight and obesity. Similarly, people from some cultural and linguistically diverse backgrounds, people with greater financial constraints, we know that these structural challenges contribute to a higher risk of overweight and obesity, and then the chronic conditions that follow. And so my first take-home point is really that we're very clear this is not really about the individuals in those groups, it's about the common systemic structural barriers that they face for both obesity prevention and subsequent management. And these might be resource barriers like financial constraints, time constraints, health literacy, or even general literacy and language barriers. And there might be access barriers, things like for obesity treatment and management. How able are they to get the right treatment in the right place at the right time? What are the barriers that they face that are structural and systemic? There are a number of access barriers when it comes to healthy and affordable, culturally relevant food, and a number again when it comes to safe and appropriate physical activity options. And I really like this schema from Finnish physician Pekka Puschka, which I think Louise Bauer shared maybe 20 years ago, which really demonstrates this steep gradient that you're asking an individual to push the healthy weight ball up, which is all those major structural barriers to obesity treatment and prevention. And so it's clearly really important that these barriers are removed and that they're removed at scale, so that it's not about each individual having to tackle them. It's really a systemic approach that will allow us to remove those barriers at scale in a way that makes it much easier for all individuals, all Australians, to push that ball across a much less steep gradient. And so without going into lots of detail, because it's a very brief talk, I just wanted to outline, what do I mean by systems? And so if we just think briefly about treatment, access, constraints and barriers, the systems that drive that are things like our health system models, the extent to which they provide easy integration and appropriate and adequate funding, no matter who you are or where you are and what you need. One example of that is obviously the rural and regional infrastructure that exists is not optimal for allowing equal access to appropriate obesity treatment and management for people living in remote and regional areas. Similarly, if we think about healthy and affordable, culturally relevant food, there are a number of systems that really are not necessarily adequate or appropriate for all people. So food system policy, planning and infrastructure, transport and logistics, they are all systems that we could intervene upon to try and make sure that some of these major structural barriers to accessing healthy and affordable food are removed across the entire population. And similarly, if we think about physical activity, some of those systems, transport, facilities, we know planning laws contribute safety and the environment, heat, pollution, all these things impact an individual's capacity to partake in appropriate and safe physical activity through mechanisms that have got nothing to do with them as an individual. So I just want to end by really thinking about, well, how can we intervene on these systems? And, part of that is clearly a recognition of the first 2 points I've made, that the barriers are structural and systemic, and that we need to remove them in a way that recognises this. And I just want to end by saying there are a number of tools that exist to help for policymakers. There are a number of equity impact assessment tools, and a recent piece of work from one of our PhD students, I'll leave you with this schema, has really identified what is it that can enhance equity when we are planning for policy in a way that recognises all these structural barriers. So thank you very much.